Hey, it's Ika here. Today I'm going to be talking a bit about the top placing team for the first season of Series 8. It's pretty easy for me to give the poker pace to lead people to it, which is what I generally do um, when I post teams to the forums, but I think it's a bit useful to just get an idea of what the builder was thinking when making the team and how to use it for to its fullest potential. This video is going to go a bit in depth into the process of the builder, so hopefully this video can kind of help you guys build for the format. So this team was made by a top Japanese player, Chihaya Poke. So I'm just going to go on a bit into how Chihaya built this team, and we're going to start with Zacian. When you're building a team, you want to build it around a specific restricted mon in Series 8. The restricted mon, in many ways, it's like your ace, your main win condition. So in this particular case, Jai has chosen Zacian. And why Zacian? Because it's objectively the strongest restricted Pokemon, and it can take on many of the opposing restricted mons, which makes it quite valuable without needing to use Dynamax. So what goes into the start of a Zacian team? You go, okay, what is the main Zacian? Well, it's Quagsire. So a large emphasis of this team and any Zacian team is how do we deal with Quagsire? So generally you have Lapras plus Zapdos. Lapras and Zapdos are just very good Pokemon that pressure Quagsire in particular. So Zapdos is there as a sweeper that can kind of pressure it on more offensive teams that just have Quagsire there as a way to deal with Zacian. It's very good at doing this, but it does face some problems. In particular, Tyranitar is a problem, and Stall is a problem because Chansey plus Quagsire can war Zapdos. So this is why we have Lapras here. The Lapras set is a bit different from the standard one, which would be like Freeze Dry, Sheer Cold, Thunder, maybe an Ice Shard or something like that, or Sparkling Aria. This one is particularly there to help deal with the things that Zapdos in this team cannot break through. So you have Body Press, which is there for Tyranitar, and then you have Horn Drill there to break through Chansey and Quagsire cores. So these three Pokemon are the main core of the team, and then what you want to do with the rest of your team is kind of build up the strengths of your core as well as compensate for some of the weaknesses. For example, these three don't do you don't have an electric type here, so opposing Zapdos, say, or Regieleki is very threatening. So we can talk about Rhyperior, and this is the first Pokemon that was added to the team by Chihaya. Having a ground type is pretty much mandatory at the top level of VSS. You don't want to be Volt switched on all day, and in this particular case, Rhyperior is the ground of choice. I just need it there. I'm not going to go into the set right now. So then you go from your 3 and you look at your 4. So in this case, Zapdos, Lapras, Zacian, and Rhyperior. And you go, okay, well, what does this have difficulty with? And then you go, okay, the Crossbow main is something that I'm looking at right here. That Chihaya also notices that is a bit of an issue for this team, because it can do its weakness policy shenanigans and just break its way through this core quite easily. It also beats Zacian. So we have a Shifu here. Wicked Blow in particular is very good dealing with the crossbow, especially if it's behind dual screens to guarantee critical hits are very useful. And then lastly we have Heatran. Heatran is kind of here as an Eternatus check, which can beat Eternatus can do okay versus Zacian, although Zacian technically can win, but it can't really switch into Eternatus, and Eternatus does beat Zapdos pretty hard, so in this case you can bring Heatran as a Eternatus check. So this kind of summarizes the basic building blocks of the team. Notice that like Zacian is very broken versus most Pokemon. It has a few checks and the rest of the team is built around removing those checks or pressuring those checks so Zacian can shine. So I'm going to talk about the individual Pokemon now and kind of go through their EV spreads, through what the thought process of Chihaya is when they're building this team. So Zacian, the basic purpose of this particular spread and this set is to trade with the other restricted legendaries. Normally Zacian's a max attack, max speed, jolly nature, but this one's a bit of a bulkier spread, and it's bulky because it suits the purpose of Zacian within this particular team composition. So obviously Zacian naturally beats many of the restricted Pokemon such as Indepth without any investment, so we're going to kind of focus on two matchups that Zacian can lose, which are Kyogre and Calyrex Ice Rider. So the first thing that you guys, if you have played much of Series 8, might know is that Kyogre, I mean Oko's Zacian with Water Spout, and because Kyogre often uses Choice Scarf, this means that Kyogre wins a 1v1. This spread is designed to live Water Spout. In that way, Zacian can use Play Rough and then use Quick Attack. So essentially, instead of Kyogre winning that 1v1 as it might do earlier in the season, Zacian wins the 1v1. So that's the first part. The second part is Calyrex Ice Rider. It Oko's Zacian with Max Quake, especially on the Trick Room, but in general it can, but generally this will be a matchup on the Trick Room. So Ice Rider will be going first, but this particular spread lives Max Quake from Calyrex Ice Rider and then can KO with Behemoth Blade, which is obviously doubled under Dynamax. The speed is the last thing, it outspeeds Garchomp. So the last thing to consider with Zacian is obviously, aside from Quagsire, Zacian can easily reverse sweep its own team. So this is why you have this particular set: Behemoth Blade, Play Rough, Quick Attack, Psychic Signs. That way, when Ditto comes in and tries to kill your Zacian, you can then go into Heatran, which can will resist all of these attacks that way and can hit it back with a fire move. So, go on to Lapras. Usually Laprases have max HP, max special attack. This particular one doesn't. The HP defense investment, I talked about it, of the purpose of Lapras earlier, with it checking Tyranitar as well as breaking through Stole. But yeah, it's defensive because that allows it to substitute on Celesteela's Heavy Slam and Flamethrower. So you can normally Celesteela would just sit on Lapras and wind it up, but you can actually start firing off Hornbills versus Celesteela. and substitute on it so you don't get seeded. This little bit of speed helps out. We'll talk about Zapdos next. One of the things I think people should notice straight away about the Zapdos is there's no roost. A lot of people who are newer to VSS or even intermediate hype, good players naturally go, oh, well, every Zapdos needs roost. Well, that's not true. It's all dependent on what the purpose of the Pokemon is, despite obviously roost being amazing on Zapdos. So we have Thunder Wave here, and the purpose of Zapdos in this particular team, it's there as the primary Dynamax sweeper. Its purpose therefore is to Dynamax use max Airstream, max Lightning, and just start hitting stuff really hard, rather than stalling out Pokemon, which it can also do with boost and pressure. Thunder Wave is there specifically against Shadow Calyrex. Basically, you want to you do your Dynamax scene at the start of the battle, and then you can Thunder Wave Calyrex Shadow, and that allows Zacian, which will be behind the Zapdos, to deal with it. Rising Voltage is used over Thunderbolt with this in mind, because you have base 140 power, after you've done your Dynamax. So yeah. Now I can talk a bit about Rhyperior. Rhyperior's main purpose is to check Zapdos. You need a Zapdos check on every single team. So the bulk of investment is with this in mind, to live 2 hits from Dynamax Life or Zapdos. Should be noted, unlike legendary Pokemon, or I should say restricted Pokemon, that are not going to show up every game. You're not going to go off against an elite in every game. Most games will have a Zapdos in, so being able to deal with this Pokemon is a must, and you probably, if you're playing this team, you'll be using Rhyperior a lot. The secondary perk of it is it's able to switch it into Zacian C if it's absolutely needed. It lives 1 hit from Zacian, and then it can attack faster with its Constabulary. There's not really much to say about this Sheath reset. It's completely standard. The main notes that Shahaya gave are that Adamant is used over Jolly, it pressures stall harder. So like Arcanine, Zapdos, Quagsire builds. There's also a counter there for Zacian, but most people who are good will see through this. So lastly, you have Heatran. Heatran's there for the Cosmic Dustmane and Eternatus matchups. The reason there's Balloon, it kind of relates to the kind of cores that Eternatus is seen in, which are often Eternatus plus Ditto cores. So obviously if Eternatus is pressured by Heatran and has to switch out, even if you go to Ditto to scout the set, you can't KO Heatran with Earth Power, which is why you have the Balloon. Last move is Solar Beam. That's for your water ground types, so Quagsire, Seismitoad, and the speed here is to just outspeed Seismitoad, or modest Seismitoad. Yeah, keep in mind with this also Solar Beam has a niche usage against Groudon teams, although you won't be seeing much Groudon because it's not very good. So with now you know all 6 Pokemon, we can talk a bit about matchups. I'll just keep it on Zacian here. So generally when giving advice on matchups, or like thinking about matchups when you're looking at your team, you want to look at cores or styles. So you go, how does my team match up with this core or this style? In Series 8, it's pretty easy because you just go, okay, you can define cores by their restricted Pokemon, which makes things a lot easier than having to, talk about various different Pokemon. So we'll be talking about restricted Pokemon here and how you use this team or good Zacian Lapras teams to fight different types of cores. So in the mirror, i.e. versus opposing Zacian Crown, you want to start off with Dynamaxing Zapdos and work from there to bring Zacian in later in the game when you've traded Dynamax, or you've used or you've managed to kill opposing Zacian. Why you want to lead with Zapdos is it stops Lapras for screens for free, and if the opponent leads Zacian, it trades better into Zacian than your own Zacian. You have to keep in mind that your own Zacian is slower than Max Zacian. So yeah, just gotta be careful about that. Your main threat is Sword Stance from opposing Zacian. This team doesn't really have much to deal with ST Zacian, so you want to be making sure that Zacian never gets the chance to Sword Stance. The last is generally Rhyperior. Rhyperior obviously is there for opposing Zapdos, and can in a pinch be used to trade with Zacian, and then you can get a cost up Rock Blast off versus Zapdos C. So versus Eternatus, you're going to want to bring Zacian, of course, as well as Lapras. Lapras is there in particular versus for like Cycle or Stolia based builds, and then it kind of depends on what Eternatus team it is. The main two you want to be considering are Zapdos and Heatran. If it's like a Ditto sort of composition, you probably want to bring in Heatran. Otherwise, Zapdos can also be a good choice. Versus Kyogre, you want to bring Zacian, and then either Rhyperior, Zacian plus Zapdos, and then you want to bring either Rhyperior or Lapras. You'll see there's like a general theme of bringing Zacian using Zapdos as your Dynamax set, and then your matchup specific Pokemon. So what your aim is in the game versus Kyogre teams is you want to bring the 1v1 of Zacian versus Kyogre, because you could bait your opponent into using Water Spout, and then you can Dynamax with your Zapdos in the back and win. So yeah, your last is either Rhyperior or Lapras. If the opposing team has a Zapdos, you need to bring Rhyperior. Otherwise, you can bring Lapras against more bulkier Kyogre teams that don't have Zapdos, might have more Story elements like the Chanseys and stuff like that. Versus Yveltal, you have Zacian and you just use Zacian and Zapdos, and then whatever other Pokemon you want. You should have the advantage in this matchup. So and also have the advantage versus Xerneas, where it's the same thing. Generally you want Zacian and Zapdos, and then at least versus Xerneas, Rhyperior, he's kind of good, but versus Yveltal, it depends on the team. So let's talk about the Calyrex forms. Versus Calyrex Shadow is probably the hardest matchup for this team. The reason it's hard is just Calyrex Shadow is fast and it can play mind games even for Shifu, like through Will-O-Wisp. This Shifu, then you can't just sucker punch and kill it. Other teams generally have better ways of dealing with color shadow than this team. It's just when you're building a ladder team, it can't be perfect. No team is perfect, so you have places where you kind of have to sacrifice in order to, but you have ways to win. But you can't just have 100-0 matchups everywhere. This is one particular one. You want to always lead with Zapdos here. The aim is to Dynamax early, max Airstream, get off of Thunder Wave versus Cataracts Shadow, and then Zacian C can come in and outspeed. The Shifu is generally good Pokemon to have in the back. Just Sucker Punch can win, but can stop Dynamax Calyrex. Versus the Ice Rider, you want to trade Zacian with Zacian C versus the Ice Rider. Use your EVs on purpose of your Pokemon. So if you've EV'd, one thing that I see people do in their teams is they EV their Pokemon to, like, okay, I'm EVing this to live this or to OHKO this, and then when they go to the actual Pokemon selection screen, they don't pick that Pokemon. So right here, we've EV'd our Zacian to deal with Ice Rider in the 1v1, so you want to be using Zacian to trade. So Zacian lead is good, then you can bring any two based on the team, but obviously Rhyperior is good if Trick Room is up. This matchup can be pretty tough if the opponent knows what they're doing now. Versus the Crossman Dustbane, you want Zapdos or Zacian lead, and then having Heatran or Shifu in the back. One thing you want to make sure Heatran's air bleed is intact. Reason for this is you don't want to be able to be earthquaked by the Crossman Dustbane. That's just, yeah, basically the main reason. Lastly, I'll talk a bit about Ho. It's not as important. You want to bring Hornbill, aka Lapras and Spam Hornbill, as well as using it Rhyperior to check Ho. Then anything else. You don't have to bring Zacian into this matchup because Ho just beats Zacian straight up. So this is kind of the basics behind each major matchup. Obviously it depends from game to game. You make your own individual judgment, but that's like the baseline of what you should be thinking about when you're going into the matchups. So I kind of hope this helps a lot if you want to ladder with this team in the next season, or just gives you a better idea of the meta in general and how to build and pilot a Zacian Lapras team. Thanks for watching, and I will try and make some more videos in the future. Hopefully some stuff that's a bit more informative like this one. I've been making some pretty bad content recently, but there you go. All of us have off days. Alright, cheers for tuning in.